That man will lend you a hand. That man will guard your land. That man will understand. That man is Batman. Batman. That man is Batman. That man is faster than the latest high-tech police van. Just ask any librarian. That man is Batman. Batman. That man is Batman. When the wave of crime began, he was already with a plan. He locked the Joker in the garbage can. That man is Batman.
What's up, Previews World? I am your Corporal AI, Troy Jeffrey Allen. Thanks for joining us for our AI Roundtable. I thought I was a Luddite, but hey, Google, turn the light screen. I'm a hypocrite because I'm sitting in the smart room right now. So this episode, of course, is about AI, particularly how it affects the art world, but even though more particularly comic books. So I brought in some industry professionals with skin in the game, which truthfully, they are not alone. Let's go from the top here, and I'll ask you guys to maybe just explain your different roles in your respective companies while we do this. Up first, Sean Michael Robinson.
Hey,
How's
Troy.
it going, man?
Oh, it's doing good, man. I've heard you voice many times, and I'm happy to finally being able to back and forth with you.
No, absolutely. So can you real quick explain your role in Living the Line?
Yeah, so I'm the owner, operator, publisher at Living the Line. With a small publishing company like this, it means I do most of the things, other than translating books and, some tasks, design tasks and stuff like that. And I am also happen to be the publisher and, mild co-writer of what we were considering the first comic ever entirely illustrated by AI. And this was back in May and June of last year. And contrary to what you might think by that, I am also a skeptic of the basically the proponent of the negative effects these technologies are going to have on us, basically as human beings, let alone the art and illustration world. I'm a freelance illustrator, and it's just the first time that Carson, who's going to be on here as well, and I first exchanged text about this. I was like, okay, well, that's it. There's no more illustration. It's just a question of when it's going to happen. And so far, that is basically the only thing that I think we're really wrong about is how fast it's developed. And that's the thing that's been really surprising so far.
Yeah, no, we will definitely get into that. Let me introduce our other guest, Mike Marts of Mad Cave Studios. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Can you explain your role at Mad Cave for us real quick?
Sure. Yeah, at Mad Cave, I'm the editor-in-chief. So I take care of all the creative acquisitions, also manage the editorial staff. And over at Mad Cave, we have a few different imprints. We have Mad Cave proper, which takes care of creator-owned comics, also a few licensed properties, and then we have some homegrown things that we do. Then we have Maverick, which is a YA imprint, and then Paper Cuts, which we acquired last year, which is a middle grade publisher.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Also joining us is Carson Grubaugh, creator of Abolition of Man. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hi, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Hey, Sean, how's it going?
Good to see you,
My
man.
role in Living the Line is I'm just a hype man for Sean, usually on YouTube, and all the wonderful books he puts out. And then, co-author of Strange Death of Alex Raymond, which Sean put out, and then basically conceptual creator of the Abolition of Man and one of the three authors, and then the guy who put it all in, like told the AI what to do.
Okay. All right. And we're going to get into that for sure as well. Also joining us is Tom Pescator, indie creator of Scout Comics and, more importantly, Junction City Comics. What's up, Tom?
Hey, what's going on?
So can you just give us a little rundown of what Junction City Comics is?
Oh, yeah, it's just actually it's just me and a friend who self-published superhero comics.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Working with writers all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And at Scout Comics, I have a comic right now called Junction Jones and the Corduroy Conspiracy. It's I call it a cyber hobo jazz punk noir.
I like that very much. All right, so let me frame this a bit for those not entirely familiar. AI, of course, is artificial intelligence, and its role in the world of art specifically has turned into a sort of battleground. It started online, of course, but then matured into concerns about labor and copyright law, and currently it's a battleground in Hollywood, right? Some see this as a capitalistic tool. Others see it as an evolutionary process that humans and machines can grow together in. At the base of this argument is the question, what's with the hands, man? That seems to be the only thing people are really concerned about these days. That seems to be the thing already. It's always the tail of that conversation. What's with the hands? But no, seriously, the real question here is this a necessary panic? Do scared people need to understand the tech better? I'm just going to go around the clock here. So, Sean, do people need to understand the tech better? Is this a necessary panic?
Well, damn, man. I mean, it is a necessary panic, but also people don't understand the tech at all. I'm sorry to say. Almost every discussion that happens about this shows just a wanton disregard for the actual information in terms of how the actual, algorithms work. Essentially, machine learning has allowed machines to have access to things that we never anticipated. This is not a super high computing, difficult thing for these machines to do. Essentially, the people who were working on these problems just realized, oh shit, I just need to ask it to do something in this manner, and this is the result. And, you should be panicked in the sense that the things that were once the domain of people are can be algorithmically derived. I have been struggling with that now for about 14 months. And, Carson and I had a lot of really long conversations with a lot of people who we really respect about this. I think Dave McKean, conversation we had with him and conversation we had with Luciano Floridi, the philosopher, both of them kind of gave me some additional perspective that we wouldn't have had otherwise to it, and kind of calmed me a little bit. But it was an existential crisis for me. Like, the things that I use to focus on my identity, the things that I thought were the domain of people, are possible to replicate or at least convincingly mock up in an algorithmic fashion. And that itself, I think, is beyond all of the very, very real labor issues and short-term things. That is the sort of long-term thing that I think we're going to have to philosophically grapple with. And frankly, that I think that Carson has managed to grapple with in his project, The Abolition of Man.
What about you, Mike? Is this a necessary panic? You guys actually wrote a response to something that, basically to the conversation a couple of months ago. So where do you fall on this?
It's definitely a necessary panic. I think it's, something like AI and how it's being used in comics or in any art form at this point, it's in its infancy. So there are a lot of unknowns. People are unsure of where it will go, how far it will go. But when you're, when you're publishing the type of comics that we do at Man Cave, we're so focused on creator-owned comics. You're always trying to protect the creator. You're trying to protect their rights. You're trying to protect what they've created. And AI goes into areas where those rights can be threatened. And the jobs that these people have, the creators have, are threatened. Let's be honest, most people getting into comics aren't getting into comics to become rich. They're getting into it because they love comics. They have a passion for it, and it's in their blood. And something like AI threatens to take that away, and then what do we have after that? So I think we're at a really important point in this whole process where there are a lot of unknowns, there are a lot of worries, there are a lot of fears, and I think it's important that the industry kind of comes together and tries to tackle the issues now before they spiral out of control.
Okay, no, well put, well put. I say clockwise, right? So, Carson, is this a necessary panic?
Well, I'll agree with Sean that people need to know more, because when you have a necessary panic and you don't actually understand what you're panicking about, you can do as much damage as the thing you're panicking about. So a lot of the issues with job loss, and especially with copyright, most people don't understand how this tech works. And when we talk to people and the arguments they make show that they don't know what the tech is doing, whether they think it's just photo bashing or something, creators are going to retroactively get themselves into a lot of hot water with copyright lawsuits and things like that. So that's a very pressing issue, is the jobs issue, how creators might actually do themselves disservice by taking up lawsuits and misunderstanding this just as photo bashing or somehow appropriating their work. That's not what it's doing. So that is actually, to me, a very pressing concern, because we're going to retroactively make looking at art illegal, possibly. And but then, long term also, like Sean said, those are short-term concerns, and those are short-term concerns that every new technology have brought along, and they're valid. People's lives are, the livelihoods are at stake, but there's a much bigger existential issue that I prefer to stay focused on. And as someone who's been dealing with this philosophically for 20 years, those are the concerns that I've been worried about for a very long time. So it kind of has given me the platform to talk about them a little bit more explicitly, which is cool.
What about you, Tom? Is this a necessary panic?
I think so. For me, it's like I'm interested in like the philosophical implications and everything, but more so like the materialist implications of. I see a time where Marvel or DC tests out a AI comic written and drawn by AI, and that cuts out inkers, pencilers, writers, colorists, flatters, and it's streamlining the process of making these books feasible for them in terms of making money. I see it's similar to me as like a supermarket testing out self-checkout. And then you go into the supermarket, there's one employee and 15 self-checkouts, and a lot like supermarkets, people that work at like Marvel and DC don't have a union. There's no, like, you see like the actors and writers right now in Hollywood, one of the main things is like AI. And then UPS, one of the recent concessions was no self-driving vehicles. So like there are, like, in a way it's similar outside of the art aspect to like streamlining assembly line type capitalist control over like an industry.
Well, and I don't think that the people that are behind this tech do themselves any favors by the ignorance they show of the art process and the disrespect that they show to acquired skills. We should just say that when we first got into this conversation, it was very interesting because we were essentially banging the gong, like, look, this stuff is happening. And as the conversation has evolved, it's kind of bifurcated into this sort of like political alignment thing where it's the it's a very strict kind of thing, but there's an additional element to it where people who are like tech enthusiasts who think that one day your brain is going to be augmented by a computer and how lovely it's going to be. All of those people, are happy to pop onto our interview with Dave McKean and tell us like, well, elevator operators probably complain too, and they're going to compare illustrators to elevator operators. And people have been making art, as far as we know, for as long as people have been people. Like that has been one of the things that we've defined as people. And to that person, after I kind of had this outraged thing, I had to kind of just come back and just say, well, damn, you know what? Some of those elevator operators really did like their jobs. I would bet that people got real fulfillment out of that. And if you want to call me an elevator operator because I like to draw, well, guess what? I guess I'm an elevator operator because damn it, I'm still going to draw.
I had to leave that. I had to leave that comment section on your interview. This is as scary as the AI is.
Actually, I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry. Go ahead.
That's an interesting point, and I think like anytime technology ends up replacing people's jobs, it's an unfortunate thing. It's a sad thing. But we're in a unique space where this is artwork, and this is something that's created from someone's mind and from their talents, which is different than operating an elevator or from running a cash register at the grocery store. So it's completely different, and it just it gets into territories, and it's not surprising to see that people are so divided over this.
It's not something that you can train people to do. It's not something that you can just teach.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to it's based on experience in a lot of ways.
But that's where that's the real crisis here, is that we now understand that being an artist and being a creator is not any more interesting or sophisticated than being a cashier operator. Actually, the AI have become better artists faster than they've become truck drivers. Becoming an artist is an easier problem to solve than being a truck driver.
Yeah.
So that's part of the confusion here, is people are trying to hold on to creativity as a special human thing, and we now have proof that it's not. And that is a psychological crisis for the species that's much more interesting to me. That it is easier to make art than it is to drive a truck.
Well, let me ask you guys this: the piece that was just up there is interesting, and I suppose that's AI generated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with single piece illustrations, with covers, with pinups, with something like this, I definitely see where the AI technology has advanced to a certain point where it could be hard to decipher between, is this a real thing or is this AI generated? Where I've seen a big difference is if AI attempts to tell a story sequentially, panel to panel. I don't think it's gotten it right with pacing, with how things should be arranged panel to panel. I'm curious to get you guys' thoughts on that same topic.
Yeah, that's different. That's storytelling. So we are also finding out that storytelling is probably more complex than driving a truck.
Right.
But those are like two different things. So as comic artists, I'm not particularly worried yet because they haven't cracked that nugget yet. But for illustrators and painters, like what you've been doing all the time is less interesting than driving a truck. Sorry. So yay for comics, right? We're doing the complicated thing.
Well,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I should say, look, Carson has a background in oil painting and has won national awards for his oil paintings and stuff like that. His background is a fine art context. We're slamming the single image just from the facts on the ground that this is the first nut that was cracked. And the thing is that this is coming. Mr. David Midjourney is hunkered down in his basement right now with his beanie on and is busy coding how to seed these images so that you don't have to use weird workarounds to have them look similar to each other from panel to panel. I mean, that's something that is on his mind, I'm sure, every day is when can I ruin another industry? No offense to you, Mr. David Midjourney. You did a good thing. His only public interview about this, by the way, is the most sanctimonious bullshit I've ever seen. Apologies, PREVIEWSworld. Bullshit isn't allowed in here. He says how hard it would be to have artists disallow themselves to be used as prompts. So that'd be very difficult to keep a database. Oh yeah, David, more difficult than teaching a computer how to paint? What a jackass.
Well, Carson, can you explain your process a little bit? Like, who do you think, just explain your process before we get into the other aspects of it. Like, how did you make Abolition of Man?
Well, it was put into 3 different experiments basically that like make up the 5 different issues. So the first experiment was just reading it a sentence at a time with no other prompting. Just imagine, / imagine, and then a sentence at a time from C.S. Lewis's essay, The Abolition of Man, which predicted all of the problems we're going to have now, in 1940 or whatever. So those were just literally like, what does it make of this sentence? And it's amazingly good at kind of poetic interpretation, surprisingly. In the second 2 issues, we wanted to see, could you use it to tell a story? And that became much more difficult because then I had to figure out how to describe what I needed in the panel. And yeah, any kind of consistency. And these things change. I mean, from when we were doing this in May and June of 2020 to now, it's ridiculously better now. And then in the 4th issue, I also used a script generating AI to make a descriptive script. And then I fed those descriptions to the AI. And that one came out completely horrific, where the script was about like dead body mutilated sex parties and abuse of slave traded children or something. That's about as much as I could extract out of I just said, write a script for The Abolition of Man. And that's the script I got that you can see in issue 4 of that.
Which is delightful as a publisher to just be told, by the way, that, machine in its infancy is going to decide what all the covers of this thing look like. Oh my God,
Well, actually, what made you gamble on Abolition of Man? What made you want to approach this project?
I mean, we were literally texting. I mean, you can look through our text chain. We should make that public at some time. Carson is just like, we've been talking about, like, hey, look, have you heard about this Midjourney thing? It hadn't been released yet, and both of us had applied to be early test users. Like, I was very curious to see what it was, and like the first images that he generated, I was just like, I mean, I'm sorry, man, that's an acrylic painting. That's an acrylic painting that looks like a horrific Masamune Shiro illustration. And it didn't matter that it was horrific, because the fact that it did it, I mean, this is the old saw about, like, does it matter how well the horse counts? If the horse counts, the horse counts, right? Here's a computer who's making horrifying images. And then after we got just a tiniest bit more of exposure to it, it's like, actually, these are really expressive. Have you ever seen anything like this? It's kind of like, a German expressionist charcoal painter, charcoal artist took their stuff and, had a vision problem. It's got this kind of like compelling aspect to it, the early stuff, and of course these edges have filed off over time, but I mean, it was just really clear, like, we got to do it. We got to do something with this. And Carson was just like, I'm on it, because, it's inspiring. I mean this in a neutral sense, a aesthetically neutral sense. It is inspiring to see. I mean, it's in a kind of mild way a communion with a retarded robot. I mean, I mean this in the most respectful way. It's like, you have this thing that is much smarter than you, but knows nothing. I mean, it's got skill. The color sense was just absolutely off the charts. I mean, as an illustrator, I just was drooling from the moment. Apparently, working with color harmony, if you train on, the vast library of stuff that they trained on, I'm assuming every public database of oil paintings, Smithsonian collection and things like that. Apparently, color unity is nothing to a computer, and it's something to us. I mean, I struggle to get an image that is coherent and unified in color, and something that apparently your mama's old laptop can do in a matter of seconds. That's crazy.
You brought up the aesthetic. I want to ask Tom specifically, but I also want to open this up to everybody. Aesthetically, actually, I want to ask Tom and Carson. Aesthetically, what do you think of? What are your thoughts on AI art? And you can go first, Tom.
Like the early stuff, like Sean was saying, was like really compelling to me because it was like so strange. I think as it's gotten better, it's become less interesting to me because I don't really I don't read or like comics or buy comics or art or anything like that for only the actual image. Like the process of having it created, someone creating it, like the years that someone learns to create something and then they create it and this is the thing, is is I would say more compelling to me than like as the AI gets better, it just creates these images that there's like less like uncanny valley.
What about you, Carson?
Yeah, I agree. I think the earlier, like where it was in the territory of like Dave McKean meets Francis Bacon, and the hands were messed up and stuff. I learned a lot from that. I became a significantly better artist not using the AI within 2 months of working with the AI because it taught me so much about like heading towards the archetype and the ideal, and how much you could take out in terms of realism and still land the communicative idea, the expressive idea. I thought that was really great. And then I agree that it has been bullied in a sense by public taste, because it's learning as we're saying, yes, I like that one, no, I don't like that one, do more of that, and the type of stuff that's being asked for. Most people are heading towards like photorealistic game engine requests, and so it's more likely like to get the hands right. That was like bothering everyone, you know, where I was like, this is great. So it's been bullied into a schlocky average, but I think it's still quite capable of producing things you've never seen before. You just have to learn how to break it past that photorealist schlock. So I learned a lot from it. That's the big thing, I think. But I've been messing with it less as it gets better.
What about you, Mike? What about you, Mike? You've been editor-in-chief at Aftershock, at Marvel, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you've seen a lot of artwork. Like, aesthetically, what is your reaction to the AI art?
I think in the beginning it was something kind of like fun, like almost like playing around with filters on Snapchat.
Right.
And people, even fellow artists, on Facebook were saying like, here's the prompts I gave it and here's what it came up with. And it's kind of like fun to look at. And then you see it progress, you see it improve. And, then you're kind of like getting a little scared. But I've seen it improve, certainly in the area of single piece illustrations. Like I've been doing this for 30 years and choosing artists and selecting artists and working with artists. And yet even I can be fooled, and I feel like I have a good eye. I feel like I can detect stuff pretty easily. I know when anatomy's wrong or, perspective, things like that. And yet, there's an Instagram post that went up a few months ago, and it was right after Mad Cave made the statement about, no AI artwork. And I just liked, the post because I thought the illustration was nice and pretty. And then someone called me out on it. They're like, that's AI art. And you said you don't support, AI generated artwork. And I'm like, well, I got fooled. Yeah. So it's getting to the point where, it's very difficult to detect the difference, especially, with those type of illustrations. Yeah.
I do want to touch on your guys' post because I was curious that there was a kind of wave of, I would say a lot of this is confined to Twitter because that's where angry people are. But there was a kind of wave of people who rejected the entire premise that you could engage with the tech in a ethical or artistic way. And I actually got recently a lot of like, oh, still flogging that AI shit. Type stuff in response to the collection of Carson's book come out. And, it was an interesting experience because, the conversation was essentially like, well, we were banging the drum, like the awareness of this, like, the first major article about the art aspect of this is because I contacted the writer in question and was like, hey, are you going to do something about this? Because nobody has yet, and they really should. And their response was essentially, AI shit is AI shit. That you have crossed this line. It doesn't matter that you crossed this line 10 months before anybody thought it was a line. I'm really tempted in a situation like that to just kind of ask, like, does somebody have a list of things that are forbidden for artists? Should we make a list like that? Because I know this is like I said, this is kind of what happens in our bifurcated society. We try to decide socially, like, what side are the other people on? well, or that I like. I guess I'm going to be on that side. But this is such a unusual moment in history. It seems like artists who don't have some kind of engagement with it are essentially abdicating their responsibility as, inquisitors of the world. Like, this is part of our world now. Nobody gets to put the toothpaste back in. Like, it's been squeezed out. David Midjourney, Mr. Midjourney has already squeezed it out. Like, it's there. The source code for these things are out there. You could take and shut off the Midjourney servers. You could shut off every other, Bing AI could turn off, and people would still be able to do this on their laptops.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I guess I should have said that like a question. What? Well, I mean, but I was when I maybe I misread your guys' statement at first, but when I first read it, I thought it was saying any artists who use AI will not be published by Mad Cave. Is that
actually? You know what? Yeah, can we clarify on that? I mean, I'm sure you've clarified in other places, but what made Mad Cave issue that statement? And what made Mad Cave issue that statement?
The creator-owned portion of our company is a very important one, and our relationship with the creators is very important. So anything that we feel is going to infringe upon those creators' rights, we feel we should come out and make it clear that we're protecting our creators, and that's what we're doing there. To address one of your earlier comments, I think anytime you start making lists, you get into dangerous territory.
Yeah.
Sure. That can get pretty dicey. And I think, like you suggest, staying open, staying flexible, being able to learn how this technology is progressing and being able to adapt along with it while at the same time protecting those rights of the creators, that's going to be the primary mission.
Gotcha.
I guess Sean and I were both curious about, like, how do you determine at what point in, like I've had students play with it, and they'll generate like a character design, and then they'll go illustrate a whole book entirely out of their own skills just based on that one character design. So does that count as an artist who's using AI, or like would that preclude someone? Because there's like levels of how you could integrate it into your workflow, and how do you tell at which level it becomes inappropriate?
Exactly. Like with any technology, some of it can be used as tools in your artwork, and other times, not. So it's an interesting question, and I think it's one that we're going to have to evolve with and learn about and stay open-minded about.
So, I mean, you guys would be still into publishing Dave McKean if he was interested in doing a cover or a book for you guys, even though he's using, some of that in his current work as a sort of like how you might use collage elements. I mean, essentially, he's like replaced his previous like use of collage with, seemingly mindless AI image generation that he's then printing out and painting over and things like that. I think the last time I talked to him, it was using like fake AI versions of the who's the Italian artist Carson who did all the etchings of the ancient Rome ruins. Anyway,
I don't know.
He's generating these things and then cutting them up and pasting them and painting on. I mean, so that's not precluding him from being published by Mad Cave. Is it? I mean,
it becomes a discussion point. Now, I think at that point, someone, of course, of Dave's caliber, Dave comes in and explains his process, and you sit down with him and you talk about it, and you understand what he's doing, where it's coming from, how it's not infringing upon other creators' rights. Then you understand a specific artist process, and each artist is going to have a different story. Each artist is going to have a different journey along the way. So it's important when you're dealing with any of these artists to stop, to talk about the process, to understand where they're coming from. You can't just make a blanket statement and then to just shut people out. You have to work with each of them and understand that if they're working with you as a publisher, it's up to them to disclose anything like this, and if it could be a potential source of conflict. So in essence, it's upon them to to disclose it to the publisher and to then, have a discussion about it.
Okay.
So we're not meeting the Twitter criteria. We're actually semi-agreeing with each other and having a halfway.
Right. I don't get it. Right. I mean, truthfully, that I kind of sense that there would be this would be a more middle ground approach, which truthfully comics need, because comics Twitter needs it, even if they don't want to listen. So I appreciate it. So Carson, I wanted to ask you, and I'm going to open this up to everybody. But do you feel that, because part of this conversation is that I wrote a prompt, I'm an artist, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious, as someone who has written a prompt and then had it put into a published work, do you feel like that is artistic? Do you think that's part of a process to get to the artistic process, or?
I mean, in our case, I think it's the totality of the book that becomes the art piece, not any given illustration. So I'm not like, thank you, Sean. It's the totality of the statement that's being made, and I think that's what Mike's saying about Dave McKean. You could sit down and look at his artistic intention, and if the AI serves a conceptual function within that to make some greater point, then by all means, you're still it's worthwhile. There's other things where I'm just playing around with it and trying to see what it does, and I'm personally not claiming that as art. But also, as someone with a background in philosophy and someone with a master's degree in fine arts, I'm pretty against anyone trying to come up with any concrete definition of art anyways. I think anytime anyone has tried, there has always been someone who has immediately poked really nice big holes in any kind of analytic definition of what art is. So I don't know. I always push my students to formulate their own and be able to defend it, but I'll admit to them that at the end of the day, my criteria is it's interesting. I don't ever ask if something's art or if it's good art. Chris Burton having himself shot in the arm, call it art, call it not art, but it was interesting, and so we talk about it, and that's kind of how I come away with any of this. I don't care if it's art. That's a word that means nothing.
Well, I think you're caving a little too early, man, because certain slightly more precise words such as painter or illustrator do happen to require paint and illustration. I think we have done a disservice to ourselves as artists to accept the idea that something that only exists as ones and zeros on our screen is the same as something that Jack Kirby sweated all over. His sweat and his pencil and his paper were part of his process, and or the thing that tobacco. Made it. Yes, exactly right. The damn cigar is what did it. That was where the art was. Creating a physical object that exists independently of you, I think, is the great philosophical breakthrough that these caveman artists finally made. When it's not just like I'm splotching something on the wall. It's like I made a deer. Here's the deer that I made. Look at this, cave wife. I created this. I created this deer here, and she's like, "Well, you can't eat it." And then of course, that's the played out since then. But I mean, I think that we have kind of been primed for this moment by several decades worth of distancing from the physical object. All of these people who have made beat the bell for performance as art have sort of painted us into a corner where we're like, yeah, sure. You tie yourself to a Volkswagen, that's art. As long as you say it's art and you do it in a gallery where you can charge people money to get in. But this guy who draws this jet plane really cool, 50 different angles, he's not art. That's not really art, because it's not in the gallery. All that positioning has kind of created this moment where somebody's like, yes, I typed this sentence and now here's my art. And so, I mean, I have a lot less regard for the people who are kind of colonizing the idea of painting as I'm sorry, you are not the artist if you're telling the machine what to do. The machine is the artist. You, sir, are the person who you're the client. You type something and an image appears. You are the client. You are not the artist. You did not earn any of those skills. That machine is working its ass off for you. Am I really fast because I get a horse to ride me around on? I mean,
Tom, I saw you shaking your head, Tom. Like, where do you fall on this?
I'm right there with like intent and art. Like when I saw the Abolition of Man, I thought it was interesting as like a philosophical exercise in art, like to deal with the AI. But I've met a few people like at conventions and stuff. I won't say any names who have made their comics from AI, but just to make just to cut the artist out, basically. Like I don't have to pay an artist if I can make an AI and use some Photoshop to make everything look similar, and for me that's I don't know what to call it except for just like you don't want to work with an artist to make a comic book,
Let me ask you this: like, is this all about to change? Like, it kind of feels like that's the real fear here, is that everything's about to shift. Whether you agree with it or not, that seems to be the real concern. So is this all about to change? Mike, actually, I'll let you go first.
I hope not. I hope that I hope the ways of telling stories and the ways that we have created comics over the past 80 plus years remain the same. I'd love for the creative process to continue the way that it always has. I'd be naive and silly, to think that it won't change in some way, shape, or form. I think it's important that I don't want to say regulation, but I think it would be great for the industry as a whole to kind of come together and at least agree upon certain things. And again, it's tough. I forget who made the point earlier, but we don't have unions in comics. But in a case like this, it might be good to have something like that, something that could be put in place to at least have some policies to go by and to further protect these creators who are, like I said, bleeding, sweating, crying over these pieces of artwork that they spend hours on. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but
no. I mean, I think this is one of those conversations where it's okay to answer a question with a question. You know what I mean? It is existential in that way. Anybody else? Like, is it all about the change? Where do you fall on this?
Well, I mean,
things are always changing, right? Like, of course it's going to change. And I think with the AI, like, yes, it's here. The toothpaste is out, and we're only at the very beginning of it. And if you see how much has happened with it in what, Sean, you said 14 months, it's obvious that, like, think about cell phone technology and how that's changed the world. I mean, within a couple of years, this is going to be the same amount of change. I think it's also important that people keep an eye on the big picture. I know we're all scared about our small picture of our personal interests, but we're running a gambit here. And the gambit is, if this technology gets sufficiently complex and has sufficient amount of agency in the world, as long as it's not in the wrong hands, this could actually create the techno-social utopia that we all want, where we all get to sit around and do what we want all day. And then, you won't need to make money or have a job. You'll just be free to be an artist all day. That will cause a problem of oversaturation, where everyone can do what they want all the time. And so you'll be competing against a lot more artists because they won't have to have jobs. But I think taking an eye off of the big picture gambit, in looking at the, because you want to win that gambit. And if they can distract you with the small instance that applies only to you, then you're more likely to lose the gambit. And this is one that is an existential threat. So we should all be paying attention to the big picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wanted to say it is changing right now. I would be very curious to look at the Amazon creator comics numbers for the past couple months, because I know for a fact that they are being absolutely inundated by essentially robot requests for auto books on a variety of different topics. So let's say you're interested in the new Nick Drake biography written by, I forgot what his name is, Jack something or other, came out in the UK. So somebody is scouring news bulletins and sees that there's a new Nick Drake biography that's going to come out. And they are auto-generating based on Wikipedia entries and various other things, and essentially making a book on the Kindle platform that will then compete with this book that this guy has researched for 8 years. And it'll be in direct competition because any person that goes on to Amazon and searches Nick Drake biography is going to see the one that's already out, which was actually not written by anybody. It's essentially a regurgitated Wikipedia entry with a few illustrations thrown in. The entire thing done automated on the back end. There's not a person spending any time to do this, and all in the hopes of capturing a few misbegotten clicks. This is happening right now. Right now, at this moment, people are uploading books, quote unquote books, that consist nothing but image generated prompts.
And kids books and coloring books, print on demand kids books and coloring books. Like that was a couple months after the AI came out. Like people were making boatloads of money doing AI generated coloring.
And of course, nobody's going to make any money on it. It's going to become smaller and smaller and smaller returns. Yeah. And all of this noise is going to crowd out the actual signal, which is the poor person who just wants their book on Kindle and wants to share it with their friends, or basically Diamond right now is protected from this stuff because of the stages. You guys only work with publishers that you've already worked with, right? Crazy people like me. I'm sorry. And as long as the crazies who are already inside don't get any of those outside stuff, you got a bulwark against it, right? But the Kindle platforms, Kickstarter is another one, have had radical changes happening. I don't think it's under the hood to try to combat some of the auto-generated comics projects. And I don't think I'm talking out of school to say this. I was told by somebody who works for Kickstarter, who I'm friendly with, they've essentially supported every project that we did so far on there. We see this as a way to reach customers who prefer to have things direct to them and don't necessarily want to go to a comic store or a bookstore or whatever. We were told by somebody there that they couldn't support Carson's collection, Abolition of Man, in some of the normal ways that they do, because it was an AI project. And at first I thought, like, this is they're afraid to get flack for it, and that was not the case. So now if you go today and you go to make a Kickstarter project, it literally says we need full disclosure that of any AI involvement in this, because they're totally saturated. They're a small crew and they're getting totally overwhelmed with this. So it is changing right now. What has kept it out of the comics market is just, we don't have an auto-generated process. You guys don't do solicitations tomorrow, right? I can't pop onto my Diamond rep and say, hey, I want to solicit a book tomorrow, and then it magically appears on PREVIEWSworld.com. It's just not how it works. But if that is how it works, you would have people making publishers right now hoping to get some of those, those random clicks. This is Carson's concept that he coined back in 2014 or whatever, the banal content apocalypse. Anybody who's visited Facebook recently will have been participating in the first wave of the banal content apocalypse.
Actually, it's funny. I was going to ask about this, and then I was sort of like, this seems like a kind of a weird question. But I did see a thing about zombie content. That was a term that I saw get thrown around a lot. The risk of zombie comics, zombie video content. I remember just seeing maybe a few months ago, I saw a string of videos on YouTube. They were just sort of like Harry Potter designed by Gucci, Harry Potter designed by, it was a lot of that type of stuff. And it was just sort of like, this is such a weird world we're living in. Tom, I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you, do you think it's all about to change?
I think it has, and it is. And sometimes, this might be a strange comparison, but sometimes I think of like John Henry, the story of
absolutely.
And just that he won, right? He died,
right?
And then the machines continued to create the railroads, and in that story, there's the team that he used. The reason he won was that he worked as a team, and the chiseler changed the angle of the the chisel, so that it, like, you know, it wasn't just a hammer. It was a skilled way of breaking the rocks. It wasn't just like the hammering down, you know. And it's like I feel like there's a movement of younger people in music too that are going to like lo-fi recording and things like that. And there's a lot of like people attempting to do like analog and like retrace. And I work in archiving, so like I work in like an old building with old things, but I'm digitizing all the records, you know. It's like I'm like
feeding the beast.
Yeah, I'm next to a like automaton from like 1920, but I'm using like a modern scanner to trash documents, you know. So it's I mean I think it's changed, but I don't think it's like an apocalypse necessarily of creativity.
Yeah, you're not saying that yet. Just give it a couple months.
Don't play this back 20 years from now.
Well, who knew that we'd be in a position of thanking the gatekeepers for holding back the Cossacks? You know, like they're sieging the walls, and
you know what, and maybe I'll get in trouble for saying this, but I took a stance a few years ago when we were having the gatekeeper conversation, like just about comics, right? And I was like, you need somebody to quality control, guys. Like it just can't be open the floodgates, you know. But yeah, I'm very curious about how this will advance over the next couple of months. Like I don't know if you guys saw this. The Killing Joke was recreated via AI, and you know definitely got a few things wrong. You know, took Batman very literally. But at the same time, like, you know, who knows what that looked? That was like that was last year. Who knows what that looks like now? You know, so it is quite interesting.
Well, that was like Dall-E, not Midjourney.
Right.
Dall-E significantly worse.
And better at generating like photorealistic content, and much worse at generating you know, impressionistic human seeming content.
Yeah.
Interesting that they have personalities like that, but it's essentially down to the training set. And you know, very cleverly, Mr. Midjourney, you know, turned everything loose on those public archives of you know, classic oil paintings and stuff. I remember like back in the Wild West, back in my day, back in late May 2022. You know, we were like, how is this thing working? And I remember just like trying to make the description so precise. Like, can I make it precise enough that people only use these words to describe certain eras of painting? Like I was pointing out to Carson that you could type in you know, young girl in, you know, what, clothes or whatever, and it gave you this horrible distorted face. And you've typed in peasant girl and you got this very pleasing image. And it's all because it was trained on and included all of these French, you know, peasant girl paintings that were all, you know, close-ups of a certain type. And, you know, it's just like, it's all, you know, whatever. I don't know why I'm going down this, other than the fact that these distinctions aren't going to exist ever again. You know, this is going to be the thing that your grandma tells you about, you know, how she had a nickel and they had to lick the inside of a banana peel. And you're just going to kind of roll your eyes because you're 8 or whatever, and you have bananas aplenty, right? We are going to look back on this time, and we're going to, you know, as individuals, and we're going to say, well, what the hell did we live through? And everybody else is just going to deal with the new reality,
right?
Whatever that weird place is going to be. Yeah,
Mike, you look like you were about to say something at one point. I'm sorry. Is it
going? No, I was just enjoying the conversation.
This is why it's useful to have a shirt that says the Luddites were right, because you can just point at it when you get to a certain point in the conversation. Yeah. Somebody's like, well, my damn cell phone.
Right. Exactly. You know, I'm actually, so before we close out, before I let everybody do their shout outs, I'm going to leave this in the chat. So the United States Copyright Office is undertaking a study of copyright law and policy issues raised by artificial intelligence, right? And so to inform the office's study and help assess whether legislative or regulatory steps in the area are warranted, the office seeks comments from people like you, people who are watching the stream, to comment on these issues, including those involved in the use of copyrighted works to train AI models. So this was something that just happened to just fall into like my DMs today, and I was like, well, the timing of this is so perfect. So I'm going to be sure to like leave that in the comments, because I want people to definitely take advantage of this. And also, thank you, Canon Dolex, for watching and joining us for the show. But before we go, I want everybody to get a chance to plug their individual companies, their individual works, things they're working on in their future. So let's just go around. I'll start with you, Sean.
Yeah, Living the Line has got a lineup of really exciting books right now. Every single one of our books are intended to be forever. We try to make these books art objects in their own sense. And so when you get like a collection like Carson's Abolition of Man, this is a terrifying hell object, is my intention, that, you know, you will have no doubt what it is that he's intended by the actual thing itself. And I think that a lot of publishers, you know, I hope that there's a push more towards realizing that print is not the same as digital. Having an object in your hand is not the same as looking at something on a screen. This is part of that conversation we've been having. And as publishers, I think that it is our duty to the artists who we serve to make the print as good as possible, to make the object as good as possible, the design as good as possible. So that's what we're doing right now. Abolition of Man just is going to be in stores, I think, just this week. We had Miel van de Peet's Centralia come out a couple months before, and we've got a real exciting new lineup of stuff, including Moonray Book 1 by Brandon Graham, which is coming out in October. Super psyched about that, and I'm super psyched to hear what you guys have to say about your new projects.
All right. Mike, what can you tell us about things coming down the pipe from Man Cave?
At Man Cave, you know, we pride ourselves on being able to have comics for everyone, for readers of all ages. So, you know, starting from the bottom, you know, with our younger readers, at Paper Cuts, we have things like Smurfs and Asterix and Loud House and Casa Grandes. So stuff that specifically caters to the middle grade area. Maverick is a new imprint for us. It focuses on young adult fiction, a lot of coming of age stories. And then Man Cave proper, we're focused on creator-owned comics. That's one right there that just came out a few months ago, Stefano Cardicelli's Don't Spit in the Wind. And then we're also kind of toying with some licenses too, some I think, pop culture favorites of the past, like Dick Tracy and Gotcha Man and Flash Gordon. A lot of fun licenses that we're playing with there.
What about you, Carson? Besides Abolition of Man, if there's anything else you want to pitch?
We just found out today that we'll be doing a big signing party for that at the Yale bookstore, which is pretty cool. I'll get to hang out for the second time with Luciano, which will be really nice. I would say though, since I don't have much to pitch, please don't make comments about copyright unless you know how the technology actually works. Like if you don't understand what the diffusion models process is, then please don't make comments on the copyright. It is not a photo bashing, and there is no copyright violation of any artist's work ever. If you set the precedent for copyright this way, it means you will not be allowed to look at and learn from other artists. Because what this is going to hinge on is this thing conscious or not, and it's going to pass that test. And to say that it's a copyright violation for this thing to learn by looking at other artists will then retroactively mean no artist has the right to learn from any other artist. So if you don't understand that and you don't understand how the tech is, please stay out of the conversation until you know, because it's very dangerous. That's my opinion.
No, yeah, thanks for elaborating on that, because you mentioned at the top, and I was curious what you meant by that exactly. That's good to know. Tom, what's going on at Junction City Comics and Scout Comics, if you have anything coming out from them too, or anybody else?
I read the All New Union with Chiara Jacobelli for Junction City Comics. It's a teenage superhero book, and then I have Junction Jones and the Corduroy Conspiracy coming out from Scout Comics. I think issue 3 should be coming out this month. With he calls himself Loco Gonzalez, but if you search Luciano Cruzado, you can find him.
All right, cool. So real quick, I'm gonna plug my comic, which I am actually actively going to try. I'm actively experimenting with AI art on. In a small, for just 2 pages. We just made a map of our fictional city in Fight of the Century. So definitely check that out. I'm also going to plug one of my favorite podcasts, AI for Humans, which I've been listening to a lot lately. That's on YouTube. I'm also going to plug Douglas Rushkoff's podcast, which is Team Human, which I've been a long time fan of as well. And of course, I'm going to plug the Previews catalog, where you can afford, of course, find Scout Comics, Mad Cave, Living the Line, and so much more. As you can see, Michelle's on the cover this month, as well as Zawa from Image Comics. I'm sorry, from Boombox. So definitely keep an eye out for that. The catalog just dropped this past Wednesday, physically in comic shops, but you can also go to our website, previewsworld.com/catalog, and check it out, of course. And I did drop the information about the Copyright Office's survey as well in the comment section. So definitely, if you are interested, check it out. But also listen to Carson. If you don't know what you're talking about, shut up. So, and, go ahead.
Well, it's so deep, though. I mean, it's weird that bureaucrats are gonna. They're so late to the party, gentlemen.
Yeah.
But two, I mean, I don't know what legislation looks like. I mean, I don't know how you say you can't do this. I mean, it's just, it's a real tough thing, and perversely, it makes me, more somehow have some kernel of positivity about AI all of a sudden. Like when I hear somebody tells me that they don't want me to do it, I mean, I'm very tempted to just like say that's it. We're going all AI all the time. I mean, I don't really mean that, but like it's the perverse among us who don't like being told what to do. Right. There's something about that. I mean, it is an intriguing technology. And I think part of why the discussion has been so fraught is because it is scary and exciting in equal parts.
You know what you sound like? You sound like a human artist. So there you go. Guys, thank you very much for joining me for this. This was something we've been trying to get going for about 2 months, and I'm glad that we got all the people in the room together to talk about this. I feel like we are well represented on the issue here. So again, thank you very much for joining us. As always, again, PREVIEWSworld.com. You can see all these publishers and all their individual work. Definitely check them out. And that's it, guys. Go home. I'll catch you later.
Thanks everybody.